everybody. Thank you so much today for joining us for our Little Italy of Los Angeles podcast. I've got such a special guest on with us today, Joe Mantegna. Thank you so much for being here, Joe.
My pleasure. Thank
So
you.
excited to be talking to you. Joe, it really needs no introduction, but here we go. Star of more than 100 films and television, most notably lately, he's the voice of Fat Tony over on The Simpsons and, of course, Criminal Minds. Everybody knows you from Criminal Minds. I told people today you were going to be on with me. They said, oh, my God, I love him from Criminal Minds. Broadway and theater. You got your start in theater. I know you were in Hair way back in the day, I think in 69, right?
That's correct.
And also you're here to talk about Little Italy, Los Angeles. You were kind enough to join us on our opening last year. You're very dear friends with Joe Buscaino. And what an exciting day that was, right? Last October, there was confetti, there were singers, there were bands. My goodness, what a difference a year makes, right, Joe?
Boy, I'll say, yeah, 2020 has been the tough one so far, but on we go. We'll get
On we
through.
go. And we'll get back to Little Italy soon enough, right? With more
That's
marching
right.
bands and whatnot. What do
Avanti.
absolutely. What do you think about what we're doing down there? What Joe and Mike Gatto and everyone down there is planning? Isn't it exciting?
I think it's wonderful. First of all, I grew up in basically the Little Italy of Chicago.
Mm.
Back in I was born in the late 40s, and it was a very, and to this day, they did a similar thing in Chicago. In other words, the Little Italy there existed, God, probably from the turn of the century, the turn of the last century, up into the 40s, and then it you know, kind of went its own way as these kinds of things will happen. But then they did a conscious effort of kind of revitalizing it, bringing it back to life, capturing that culture of it as they, you know, as there's been little Italy's all over the country. There's one in New York, obviously, San Francisco, Boston, other places, and it's just such an important part of, I think, of all of our cities in this country. To just kind of capture and perpetuate a bit of the culture that was so important to that particular area in that particular city. And for San Pedro, in that area, the Italian culture, the Italian fishing culture, as part of it, was so important. And to be able to kind of like acknowledge it and to say, you know what, let's not let this all kind of drift away. Let's let's do something about it. Let's honor it. Let's encourage it. Let's make something positive out of it so that people can enjoy it and learn
Yeah.
about it and appreciate it. So it's just to me it's a no lose situation. That's why I'm such a supporter of things like that, and I think they've done a really terrific job in
They've done
bringing
an
that back.
incredible job. Even with the timing, right, with what's going on with COVID, we still
Right,
have restaurants that they've made space for them over on the sidewalk. So now we've got the cafe style dining. We're still
right,
going through with the piazza that we're working on. We've got a farmers
right.
market. I think it's opening up. I think this weekend.
Fantastic. Right,
They are just moving through with this, and it's about the character of the area that people don't forget that. Hey, we're down here. We're part of Los Angeles and a very important history too. Um, let's talk a little bit about your history. You're from Chicago, right?
hmm
And you grew up in an Italian neighborhood, Italian family. Tell me a little bit.
Yeah, I did, and that was that part of it. My life has always been very strong. I'm Italian on both sides of my family, Sicilian on my father's side, Barese on my mother's side, and I've been fortunate enough, partly because of my profession, to travel quite a bit. And in doing that travel, I've been able to establish my roots back in the old country, per se, and so I'm actually very close, especially to my mother's side of the family, because a lot of them are still there. A lot of them are around my age. I've been going there since the mid '70s, and I have a cousin who owns an agriturismo. He owns basically a resort in southern Italy outside Bari in a town called Acquaviva della Fonte, which is why my company is called Acquaviva Productions, which I named after the town.
Oh, I love
So
that.
my Italian culture has been very important to me, to the point where, like you brought up, like Criminal Minds. It's no accident that my character's name was David Rossi. I very often, uh, when given the opportunity, will name characters I play I'll give them Italian surnames because I want to, first of all, to balance the books, because I've done a lot of Italian American characters that have somewhat of a negative connotation in the sense of like Godfather 3, I did the movie. I played the bad guy in it, Joey Zaza, which is fine. I don't shy away from that kind of stuff because it's like, look, it's that part of culture does exist. It does happen. You can't talk away the mafia and all that kind of stuff. But people have the fascination with those books and movies. So be it. But on the other hand, well, I'll play a character like Joey Zaza or Fat Tony on The Simpsons, which is kind of like a comic version of the
Oh,
character.
I love Fat Tony.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 30 years. But on the other hand, I play a character like David Rossi, FBI agent in Criminal Minds. I played a character named Joseph Novelli, who I named after my grandfather when I played a Supreme Court justice in the series First Monday with James Garner. When I did the Woody Allen movie Alice, I made that character, Joe Ruffalo, made him an Italian American. When I played a surgeon in a HBO movie that led to the series ER, it was called State of Emergency, I made that character an Italian American. So I try to, in other words, when given the opportunity to do positive role models in film, television, theater, I'll always say, let's make him an Italian American because I want to emphasize that thing of how 99.9% of Italian Americans are hardworking, successful, important people to the culture of this world.
And
And
you can name one after me. I'm full blooded on both sides. If you're ever
oh, there you
looking for,
go. Yeah,
you know what
it
I mean?
will.
There you go.
It would be tricky for me to use your first name, but anyway, maybe I could
That would be
work
great.
that.
Or Joe Buscaino. That would be even better, right? You can
That's
name
it.
one
Well,
after him.
Joe Buscaino used to be an LAPD policeman. My
That's how you guys
character,
met, right? Tell me about how you
that's
two met.
that is how we met. It was many years ago, and actually, he was doing something in relation to the police department, and he was already had those skills. You could tell those communicative skills, and
Oh
the guy
yeah.
was kind of looking beyond being a policeman. But in that same vein, uh, my character David Rossi was based also on LAPD policeman who I knew, David Rossi, and so it was my way of not just honoring them specifically as that particular policeman, but to be able to say these men and women have a tough job, and sometimes they get it. What we're going through right now is a good example of it. That there's
Mm.
two sides to stories and things. Not, you can't blame everybody for certain incidents, and so because of it, uh, I've been very supportive of our military and of our police and anybody in uniform, anybody who's trying to do a job that is for our benefit. And so, sometimes we just, obviously there's going to be problems sometimes, but you work on changing it, making it better. But in this particular instance, you got two great Italian Americans in Joe Buscaino and David Rossi, and I'm proud to represent them as I've done, both on film and also in terms of Joe being a good friend of somebody who's now a councilman and is doing such great work, and especially with the new Little Italy that's happening there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a force, is what it is. And there's so many of us who want to see this succeed and get the word out. In fact, when you were telling me you have a star, right, in the Little Italy district in Toronto, am I right about that?
I do. I mean, yeah. What's funny is, I mean, I have a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which was of course is wonderful, and
Major. Right.
yeah. I mean, but when I was asked when they called me and said they wanted to do one for me in Toronto, because in their Little Italy, because first of all, as you may know, Toronto has one of the largest Italian
Yeah.
populations on the planet. I mean, they have more than many major cities in Italy. And I've worked a lot in Canada, and I've done a few movies, and I directed a movie there, and I thought I was very flattered that they chose me to do that. And I remember the day I had the star inaugurated there. Um, I did it with Gino Vanelli, the singer. They gave him one
Oh,
on that
Gino
same day.
Vanelli. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we've become very good friends due to that ceremony. And the wonderful producer used to be the president of Paramount Pictures, Frank Mancuso. He surprised me, him and his wife, by flying up to Toronto and actually giving the speech for me when I got my star up in Toronto. And so that was another case of just Italian Americans kind of coming together,
Coming together.
supporting each other.
I I thought it'd be a great idea to have that down in Little Italy in San Pedro, don't you think? star for all of the, I mean, how many famous Italians are here in LA, right? Wouldn't
Yeah,
that be
that'd be
great?
great.
All
That
along
would
our
be
little
great.
piazza. We're going to
Sure,
have to
why
work on
not?
that, Joe. We got to work on that.
Okay.
Um, so a little bit growing up in Chicago, in an Italian neighborhood, Italian American neighborhood,
Yeah.
and you were always interested in the theater, right? And acting as a kid. Was that something that was encouraged or not
It
so
was,
much?
first of all, there was nothing pointing me toward it. In other words, there was nothing in my family or my immediate
Yeah.
circle that said, "Oh, you should go into show business." I was exposed to it in high school,
Ah,
and I took to it in the sense it was like, "Wow, this looked exciting," and I wanted to do it. I think my family had the best possible kind of attitude about it because they didn't quite understand it, so they weren't. It wasn't that they were encouraging, but they also weren't discouraging. And I do. I have a brother who's 8 years older than me, and he even told me once. I mean, years later, I asked him. I said, "Did mom and dad ever express any? They never really said anything to me one way or another. They would always kind of like go, oh, that's nice, you know, my brother would come." And he says at one time my parents did come to him and said, "Ronnie, it looks like your brother wants to be an actor. Um, this is something we don't know or understand. Should we how should we feel about this?" And in my brother's wisdom, he said to them, "Look, he's not stupid. If it works out, fine. And if it doesn't, he's smart enough to go on to something else. I would just assume let him pursue what he wants to pursue. It's not a dangerous profession per se. Let him go." And it was like, and I think they were relieved. It was almost like, yeah, great, okay. And and one little interesting side note to that: my mother passed away a few years ago at 101 years old.
in 2017, right?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
passed away at 101. And at her
Wow.
funeral, my brother gave a little bit of a eulogy, as did I. But he spoke first, and he said, when he got up there, he says, "My brother doesn't. I don't even think he knows this, but when he got the TV series Criminal Minds, our mother called my brother, and she said, 'Ronnie, I'm worried about Joey.' And my brother said, 'Why?' And she said, 'He's only working an hour a week.'" And
Right.
she was dead serious about it. So that, in a way, was kind of the extent of my mother's knowledge of show business. So, but I take that as a good thing because it was like it made me realize I pursued my career because I had to, because I wanted to, because it was in my it was a drive in me that had to be fulfilled, and luckily it worked out. But so again, they were neither like overly pushy or like, "Oh, you better succeed," or "God, you know," like they weren't like stage parents. And yet on the other hand, they also weren't like, "Oh no, you got to go do something else." And I've met a lot of people in the business who've had that kind of
They were
negative
discouraged. I know my
discouraged.
parents
Yeah,
didn't quite understand journalism, acting. They said, well, why don't you be a bookkeeper? You're real good at math. I'm like, well, I don't want to be a bookkeeper. So
right.
my folks didn't quite get it until
Yeah,
they saw what you do. And they're like, I understand. So you
right,
can earn a paycheck doing that. That's very
right.
important to them. They
Of
grew up in the
course,
Depression era. The thought is,
exactly.
you better bring home a paycheck. And they were very encouraging, with me working and all that. So, but I know what you mean because it's definitely a way with many Italian parents, especially from back in that time, right?
Oh yeah, I've had friends that were like they got into show business, but not after they got a degree in law or something else, or you know what I mean. They had to finish this other thing, but then still made that decision later, and it was okay then.
First time I saw you on Broadway, I had to go see you twice. Oh my gosh, Glenn Ross. Am I saying that right?
Right, you got it right. That's right.
Oh my gosh. David Mamet. Am I saying his name correctly?
Mammoth, mammoth.
Mamet. What was he like? I had many people today writing on my social media. Ask him what it was like working with him. They also want to know what it was like working with Coppola in Godfather
Right,
3.
right, right, right,
What was that like being on Broadway? Because I know your first big shot, if you will, on was in Hair, the play Hair, right?
right.
Tell me what that
1969.
was like. Yeah, in '69.
Well, first of all, that was my first professional show, the play here.
Yeah.
I see you got the photo up there. That's my wife and I from the play here. She was in the show as well. We weren't married yet, but uh, uh, we knew each other. We had both done district-wide musicals where we grew up
Mm-hmm.
on the west side of Chicago, and So when we both got cast in the play Hair, it was like, oh wow, it was like seeing an old friend. As it turned out, it turned into more than friendship, and we've been together now for over 50 years.
That's beautiful. What's your wife's
Daughters,
name? Wife's name is
Arlene, Arlene,
Arlene, and two daughters, beautiful daughters. One that you've
daughters.
worked with quite a bit. But
Yeah,
okay,
my
go ahead.
daughter Gia. But yeah, so anyway, so Hair was my first professional show. It was a musical. After that, I did the musical Godspell. And actually, I thought that was going to be kind of what I would be doing primarily in show business. I thought I was going to be a musical comedy guy because
Mm.
I had been in a band years before that, and so the music end of it seemed to be maybe my path. That leads us in a way to David Mamet because when I left that musical Godspell when it closed, I started doing just regular theater in Chicago with a group called the Organic Theater Company. And at that time, David Mamet was also in Chicago trying to sell
Ah,
his plays, trying to be a playwright. And so he saw me do some of the plays in Chicago at that time, and we're talking the mid 70s.
mm.
And I remember running into him. This is how I kind of first met him. And he said, hey, I'm a playwright. I'm trying to sell some of my plays. I think you're a terrific actor. We'll have to work together sometime, not knowing it was going to turn into a 40-year kind of
Yeah.
relationship. And I mean, we're still very close. I talked to him just probably a week ago. I feel very fortunate. I mean, it would be like growing up in in England during the time of Shakespeare and being the actor who lived down the block from William Shakespeare, who he said to him, hey, I kind of like what you do as an actor. Why don't you do a couple of my plays? You know what I mean? And that's really kind of how it happened with David. And I wound up doing plays for him on Broadway, done numerous movies with him, and he's an incredible talent and a dear friend. And so that's just one of those fortuitous kinds of things that the two of us were able to kind of come
Says
together
something
like
about
that.
you, though. You have long-term relationships with everyone that you work with. You married the young girl that you were working with, still
Right,
married.
right.
And that's one thing that people say about you. He's such a good guy, but honestly, he's very loyal, a loyal friend, and just someone loyal to
Well,
work with.
I
That
don't know.
carries you through. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I mean, I hope so. I mean, I have good role models. My parents my dad had a tough time. My dad was in ill health most of his life. He passed away. He was only 57 when he passed away. And he shouldn't have even lived it.
Tuberculosis,
Yeah,
right?
tuberculosis finally caught up. He only had part of a lung because they
Mm,
took out most of that stuff back during World War II.
yeah.
So he had a tough life. But but yet, him and my mom, they did a great job, raising my brother and I. And it wasn't always easy. I know I had a third brother who died at birth when I was about 5 years old. So there
Oh,
should have been three of us actually. Uh, but it was okay though. When I say okay, I mean is that we weren't. My mother had to work at Sears Roebuck wrapping packages for 25 years because my dad was partially disabled and had to stop working in his I think he was in his early 40s.
oh.
So uh, but we never felt, deprived or poor or depraved or anything like that. It was like, that was our life. But it was that again. I think a good part of the Italian culture because we lived upstairs from my grandparents, my mother's parents.
Of course,
Of
right.
course, I had cousins who lived all around us at different, in the neighborhood. So I grew up with so much family that that's all I knew. So I mean that is very important. And so if you latch on to something that's important, why wouldn't you hold on? Why wouldn't you?
Those Yeah, those Italian roots, that Italian upbringing is everything because you're so close. I have three sons, and they're raised out here in Los Angeles. And one of them heard me when we were talking the other day on the phone, and he said, "How come everybody who's Italian talks about how great it was to grow up Italian? Because they didn't have what we had." I said,
Yeah, right.
I wish you had what I had growing up in Jersey with cousins everywhere. Eggplants and lasagnas just appear if someone rings the doorbell. I used to really
Exactly.
wonder, where did that come from? And it's just the culture, and it's fun. It's a little crazy sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's a great time when you grow up appreciating that Italian culture. I know it's a lot like that down in San Pedro
Hmm.
because I talked to some of the people who live and work there. They said, you go down any given block and it's families working together. The restaurants are owned by people that actually came straight from Italy and Sicily a lot, actually. and then the sons and the daughters are working there. It's very much like that there, Joe, don't you think?
Right, I do think that. I mean,
Yeah,
they used to have a festival down there years ago. I'm talking about, probably in the, well, mid '80s anyway.
yeah.
Uh, and they used to have, I think probably around Columbus Day, they would do something down there, and I felt that even then. I thought like, wow, this is great. There's this whole Italian subculture that's existing down here. It's really
Isn't
great.
it? It's amazing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, especially down the seaport, because
Yes,
that's
exactly.
most of them, they were fishermen, the ones who came over here, many of them. And,
Right, and I've been to towns in Sicily, fishing towns in Sicily, and it's like you can see where there would be that they came from there, they come here, and they go, well, we'll do here what we used to do there.
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that singing voice that we were talking about earlier when musical theater. You also sung with some guys who became in a very, very famous group. Can you tell us about that?
Well, what it was is that I was in a band out of
Yeah.
Chicago, and there was another band also out of Chicago. Our band was called the Apocryphals, and that other band was called the Missing Links. And we used to play with them on occasion at different places, and we got to be good friends with them. And I remember we were playing a job once at a place called the Cheetah. There was they did, this is back in around the mid '60s when, and they had one in New York and they had one in Chicago. It was like it was kind of like a teen club, big place, actually a beautiful venue, and they'd get thousands of kids to come to watch the bands play. And I remember we were playing one night, and the Missing Links came to see us, and they told us, they said, look, we're changing the name of our band. We're going to expand it. We're going to add a couple horns. We're going to add a keyboard player because there was only a three-piece band at the time. Now they were going to seven. They said, and we're going to call ourselves Chicago Transit Authority. And we thought, oh, okay. We thought after they left, we thought those guys are crazy. Why would they do that? Why would
Right.
they add members? Because back then you're trying to make as much money as possible, so you want to keep your circle small. Well, needless to say, they ultimately, became they shortened their name because I think they were getting sued by the Chicago Transit Authority. They
Oh
probably
no,
regret
that's
it.
funny.
They probably regret doing that now, but anyway, they shortened the name to Chicago, and so yeah, so to this day, I'm very close with them. I went up and sang with them a few years ago at the Greek Theater in LA when they were in town,
Oh, you
and just
did.
I did, and then
Yeah.
coming up next month in October on PBS. They do this every year. They pick a few acts and they give them lifetime Grammy awards for their whole
Ah.
career.
Mm.
And this year, of course, it's being done virtually. But I was honored that they came to me and they filmed me being the person who presents them with their lifetime Grammy. I think it's around sometime in mid-October on PBS, uh, where it's a grant. It's called, I think, the Grammy Tribute Awards, and it'll be me that gives the speech that gives Chicago their lifetime, career Grammy award. They've won many Grammy awards, but this will be their career one, and I'm proud to do that and proud to call them my friends. And it was a great time of my life being in rock and roll.
Yeah, I'll bet. Um, it's incredible. I tell you, the career that you've had with the 100 films. Talk a little bit about Francis Ford Coppola.
Coppola,
I've always been an admirer of his. I know he's a brilliant man. Now he spends
yeah,
so much of his time up in Napa, right at his
right,
winery.
right. His wine
Um,
business. Yeah, he's segued very much into that.
yeah.
Though I will say this, which is interesting, because
Please.
this just happened in the last few weeks. It just came out that Godfather 3, which is the film that I did for him, um, he just announced that he's totally re-edited the movie. And Paramount
Oh.
Pictures allowed him to do that. He spent 6 months breaking it down frame by frame by frame and basically putting it together more in the way that he intended. Apparently, it was kind of rushed. They rushed the release of that movie back then because it had been 18 years since one of those movies came out. They wanted it to open on Christmas Day of 1990. Uh, but he really wanted more time, which he wasn't able to get. So
Hmm.
now, 30 years later, Paramount said, you know what, we're going to give you the time to make the movie you want. So I'll be, of course, having been one of the characters in the movie, I'll be curious to see it myself. Uh, and Coppola also co-produced the movie I did called Wait Until Spring Bandini, which is based on a John
Ah.
Fante book, other great Italian writer. So I did have a relationship with Francis, and working with him was just, well, it's like working with, you're working with the best. It's like we shot most of the picture in Italy, and to be able to sit with him and I brought him a bottle of wine for my cousins when because we had a long
Ah,
weekend and I went and visit my relatives and they gave me a bottle of wine to bring to him and to be able to sit in the trailer with him and share a glass of wine and just talk about being Italian Americans as much as anything else, and yet also to work for one of the greatest directors who ever lived. Uh, I feel very blessed, very fortunate to have had that experience.
that's beautiful. Tell me again the town where you're from, your family's from. They're in the southern region.
On my mother's side, it's called Acqua Viva della Fonte, which is
Mm,
basically fountain of living water.
right.
And it's a small little town outside Bari in the region of Puglia, which is around, those who need a geography lesson, it's about the Achilles heel of the boot. And my father's side is from Sicily, and the town there is called Calasciabetta, which is dead center. I've been to both places, and Calasciabetta is dead center in Sicily. The biggest town is the neighboring town. It's called Enna, Enna. But Calasciabetta is a very small little town, and I've had
Yeah.
very few relatives even left there. Most of the young people tend to
Tend to
go move
leave.
on, to go somewhere to try to get a career somewhere because the town's still a pretty small village.
Especially down in Sicily. So many.
Yeah,
It's there's not too much for them there because I've interviewed enough people from down there. It's beautiful and they want to stay, but it's a little difficult. There's just not
right,
so much for the
right.
young people, and they tend to
Exactly.
leave. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, my grandfather left, 120 years ago. I mean, just as they did to immigrate here. So,
I'm very
it
careful
happens.
about that because the same thing, my grandparents left to come here. And then, of course, when we went, and I took my boys to meet all of our relatives there, right? Oh, so wonderful. In the Avellino area, in San
Right.
Barbado, Montecozari, kind of near Naples. And I often wondered, well, why would you leave? Well, come on, it was a whole different time over 100 years ago. This terrible poverty, and
Oh,
they
of
they had to
course.
leave.
Of
And thank
course.
goodness, 100 years, 100 plus years later, it's it's turned around and they live lovely lives there now,
Oh, absolutely. No,
enriched
absolutely.
lives, beautiful lives
No,
there. So
no.
that
No, and
warms
that's the
my heart.
strength of the Italian American community in this country, in a
That's
way,
right.
because the fact is many of them had to leave from there because they were they just weren't given the opportunity or whatever. They didn't have the wealth. They didn't have the whatever. And here was this new country that was offering them a chance. So that's why, in a way, the Italian American culture is so important in this country because, if you were doing great in Italy, why would you have left? You know. So I mean,
Exactly.
we got the ones that were hungry, and
Got the ones that were, that's right. Very well
yeah.
put. Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing. And we are the offspring of those people, and I think that's a good thing.
Would you share with me what happened when you opened on Saturday Night Live, please? I don't think a lot of people know this. This is a funny, funny story. Would you please?
You mean my monologue, or you're talking about just the?
The other Joe. Didn't somebody walk out looking for another Joe? Somebody told me a story that when you
Oh,
open, is that true? That they were
no. Here's
looking.
what it is. No, here's
Okay,
what it
tell me.
is. I think they got a little mixed up, but maybe what it is, yeah, that is true. But the reason is, I came out to do my monologue, and
Yeah.
I say basically, wow, this is great. Who would have thought Joe Mantegna would be hosting Saturday Night Live? Then, of course, now in the audience, and of course it's a plant, a man stands up with his son, and the son is wearing a Joe Montana jersey, the football player from the San Francisco 49ers. And of course, you see them starting to walk out. And so the camera goes back on me, and I'm saying, well, where are you going? And they say, oh, no, it's okay. We're just going to. And I said, no, no, no. I'm hosting the first time Saturday Night Live. I said, why'd you leave? And they go, well, actually, we thought it was going to be Joe Montana, and my son's a big fan of the 49ers. So, of course, the monologue, of course. Now, at the time, you have to understand Godfather 3 had just opened the movie, and that's part of the reason I
Big.
was hosting. So I
Yeah.
take the kid and I walk him around the theater, and I basically show him around. I said, let me at least show you around before you leave. And then, of course, I put him up on a stool and I basically tell him, as kind of like Joey Zaza, my character in
Right, right.
Godfather 3, I say, nobody walks out on Joe Mantegna when he's hosting a show.
I
and,
love that.
and pretty soon the kid's saying, no, no, we want to stay. And Dad, we're going to stay. And so it's that kind of a thing. So it was kind of a joke little thing that we did.
But what a great story. And a lot of people thought that was for real. Of course it was planned, But a lot of people
Oh,
out there
totally.
thought,
Yeah, it was totally
wow,
planned. No, 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 no.
right?
It was a total setup, but it was a
Before I
lot of
let you
fun.
before I let you go, a couple of your favorite folks that you've worked with. I don't even know how you could possibly remember all of them with 100 plus 200 things,
Oh
but
God.
especially some of the Italian directors,
Okay.
actors. Let's
All
stick with
right.
Italian. How about
All
that?
right. I'll give you
That's
one
easy. I
great.
could see. You're like, oh, I got it.
I'll give you a great Italian, Don Amici.
Oh, I
I,
love him. Oh,
oh, so my wife loved him. My wife's mother loved him. My wife's grandmother loved him. My grandmother loved him. My mother loved him.
oh,
I did the movie. It's a David Mamet film called Things Change, and
mm,
I think anybody, especially your audience, talk about Italian American. That movie, I think people would love that movie if they haven't seen it because it's there's a huge Italian American kind of part of it, and it's a comedy. It
mm,
was co-written by David Mamet and Shel Silverstein, and and to work with Don Amici was such a thrill, and we became very dear friends,
mm,
and we spent a lot of time together, and we passed away. His one of his sons called me on the day he passed away, and he says, "I
mm.
just want to let you know my dad. He had been ill for a while. He said, I want you to know my dad thought of you as another one of his sons." It
Oh,
just tore me up. And if you see the movie Godfather 3, there's a moment in the movie that I actually ad lib a line as the character Joey Zaza because we're doing the Meucci parade. And Meucci is supposedly the person Italians think invented the telephone. And so I did an ad lib that Coppola loved. And he said, keep it in the movie, which we did because I did it in the rehearsal. And I said, they're interviewing my character, the press, and they're saying, Joey Zaza, what do you think of the Meucci parade? And I said, the Meucci was a great Italian. I said, all Italians are great. Meucci, who invented the telephone. Don Amici, who played the guy they think invented the telephone because he had done the movie Alexander Graham Bell, years ago. And
right.
so, I gave a little shout out to Don that way. So he's a great Italian I worked with.
Oh,
Um, there, I guess there've been others. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what other Italian Americans I worked. But I worked well Madonna. I worked with Madonna on Broadway and Speed the
Speed the
Plow,
Plow. I
and I
saw that. I
also
was
did the
also in the
movie.
audience. I was also in the audience. I
Okay.
mean, my stalker, I don't know. I went to see so much of your work on Broadway because, well, I loved theater. I would go see
Well, that's
almost
great.
anything.
That's great.
And I wanted to see her in particular. I remember the two of you very well together in that play. I was
Yeah,
studying
and I
studying the way you two related to each other, you know? How
no,
was
and I
that
wound up doing them.
experience?
I did them. It was very good, and I did a movie with her after that. I did the movie Body of Evidence with her as well, up in
Right.
Portland, and I like her. Actually, we just went and I took my whole family to see her in concert just last year
Oh,
here
fun.
in Los Angeles when she was here, and it was great.
Well,
Um,
she's a huge talent. I mean,
she is a
a
huge
quite a,
talent. I
a
mean,
visionary, and I don't know how much Broadway experience she had at that time, but I thought
none,
she,
no,
yeah,
none. But she held
she
her
did a
own.
great
I
job with
thought
you.
she
She,
held her own. What I like about her is she is fearless, and
oh,
she's a strong woman, and she's not afraid to get out there and just do it. And she's sustained. A lot of people in that business, as you know, are flashes in the pan. She's been around for 40 years.
yeah,
So she's done pretty well for herself.
that was another great one too. Well, one thing we want to do again down in Little Italy, we'd love to have a film festival. That'd be so fun if maybe we could have one of your films there, right? I mean, they've got so many great
Well, there's
ideas,
one
but
they played there once a few years ago at the San Pedro Film Festival. It's called Uncle Nino, and my daughter Gia
ah,
is in the movie as well. And that's a
hmm,
very Italian themed movie. It's all about my character, how my uncle in Italy, my dad's brother, who I haven't seen since I was a little boy,
hmm.
shows up from Italy, shows up at our home in Chicago, and it's like, whoa, we have to deal with it. It's a beautiful, lovely, funny film called Uncle Nino, and that would be you know, I think a
That was great.
apropos film for Little Italy's San Pedro.
Absolutely. But it would be great to have more of these. The plan is to have, even if we do a drive-in someday,
Oh,
wouldn't that be fun? But there's so many
fantastic!
great projects that I know you're going to help us be a part of, which is so
I'd be
wonderful.
happy to. Happy to.
Yeah, I mean, you've been there at the beginning. I know that you're going to be there all the way through as we
I
plan.
will.
This is
I will.
very exciting because you're right. I mean, Chicago has it. I realize those are giant, inner cities more than LA, right? Because they're so
Right.
spread out. But San
Right.
Diego, our model is a little bit like that, right? A
Yeah.
section of
Exactly.
a larger city. So
Yeah.
that and come down also to our farmers market. That's actually really going to be
I
lovely
will.
that we're just starting
I
up
will.
too.
I will.
Maybe we can get you a star down there too. Wouldn't that be great? I think that's a great idea.
Whatever.
Anyway, I really, really appreciate you coming on. I really do. Any words you'd like to say before I let you go? I could talk to you for 2 hours, but I
Nah,
got to.
just to everyone, just bona fortuna, and have a good day, have a good rest of the year, and God bless us all. And hopefully, 2021 will be the flip side of this year, and we'll be all positive, and we'll all move forward, and we'll learn many things from this.
It will be, as we all learn in life, as we live many years, it will be, it will turn
Right.
around, and let's hope
Absolutely.
that 2021 will be just that. But also, before I let you go, what can people see you in now?
Well, I've got a new series that I'm going to be starting. That now they say
Ah,
end of January. It's
okay.
on Amazon. It's in the television series. In the tentative, the working title is On the Spectrum, but I think it might change. But it's a beautiful show. It was created by the Jason Katims, who created the TV show Parenthood and also Friday Night Lights.
Ah,
Did those shows. But what I love about it is it deals with three young adults on the autism spectrum. And my oldest daughter Mia is among them. Is not in the show, but she has autism, and and so it was very meaningful for me to do this role of playing the father of the lead boy. And these three actors really are on the spectrum,
hmm.
and they do such a beautiful job. And the show is, because it's Amazon, it can really show there's humor, there's sadness, it's got it all. It's a real snapshot of life, of what three young adults on a spectrum, basically what they have to go through living together, you know, on their day-to-day life. So I'm looking forward to when we start doing that. Um, and in the meantime, Criminal Minds is all over the place. It's, in syndication. I did
And The
that for 10
Simpsons,
years.
Fat Tony, Fat Tony.
I'm doing one tomorrow. I'm doing a new episode tomorrow. So I've been doing that for 31 years now. So
Yeah.
so
And you show
that
up
goes
for
on.
everything, even if Fat Tony has to grunt. You were
Oh
telling me
yeah,
you will
no,
show up and you will be his grunt.
yeah, I don't like to be like, so even sometimes in films they'll say maybe they needed my hand for a shot, and I'm in the trailer and they'll say that's okay, we'll get the stand in, and I go no, and they'll say, well, nobody will know. I said I'll know. I said if I happen to catch it, I'll know that's not my hand, or I know that's not my voice saying that one word. I said if I can do it, I'm going to do it. If I'm in, I'm in.
If you're in, you're in. Is
And
that the Italian work ethic? I have to tell you.
exactly. There you go.
Joe Mantegna, thank you so much for this interview. It's an honor to be able to talk to you,
My
and
pleasure. Thank you.
hopefully I'll see you sometime up at the beach. I know that you're at your beach house not too far
Exactly.
from here and enjoying the weather, and with your wife. And please give her our regards as well.
I
Okay,
certainly
would you?
will.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, and thank you for tuning
Ciao,
into
ciao.
yeah, ciao for Little Italy of Los Angeles podcast. I hope you enjoyed our show. You can also catch it on Deborah Kobylt Live, and you'll see us also on our YouTube channel and also as an audio podcast. So honestly, wherever you get your podcasts, you'll find us. Little Italy of Los Angeles. My name is Deborah Zara Kobylt, and we'll see you later. Bye bye.